Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
I know you're here, and let me. So I think Zainab will be coming late, so we'll probably start now. Mina, can you see the screen? Okay. So that's good. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So today I will continue the discussion that we were having from the previous topic of Allah's zikr and story of Adam alayhi salam. So we'll go a little bit further today. And it's again talking about our connection, the connection of our soul with Allah Ta'ala. And we talked about last time what it means, what is meant by shajar. And Quran says that kalimatun tayyibatun is like a shajaratun tayyibatun, that whatever thought that comes to our mind, it can be shajaratun tayyibatun, or a blessed thought, or shajaratun khabisatun, or it can be an evil thought. And each thought has its own future destiny and consequences. A thought which is based on the teaching of Quran, a good thought, which mostly focuses on establishing a fair society, that will grow as a strong tree. And evil thought, doesn't matter how much we sugarcoat it, it will be rotten to its core and based on the cruelty, fraud, and depriving the Allah's creation of its rights. It will be like a weed which is easily uprooted, and that society becomes a very shallow society, hollow at its core. And Allah Ta'ala wants us to establish a fair society which is just, which is based on helping His creation. Then we had talked about that in the previous, I think we had discussed that previously, where we said that Fitrat Allah allati fatara nasu alayh, that Allah Ta'ala has given humans nature which is somewhat similar to Allah's own nature, but not completely. It resembles in how it operates, and that is what I want to focus on, because that will help us understand our connection with Allah Ta'ala as well. So let's focus on how our thought process works. Sometimes we are sitting and we have a lot of thoughts that come to our mind, and we can keep thinking for hours and hours. And unless we decide to say something, no one can understand what's going on in our mind. These are just random waves that are going in and around different parts of the brain. And unless we decide to say something, no one can ever figure out that what we are thinking, except Allah Ta'ala, because Allah Ta'ala is As-Sami and Al-Basir. Allah Ta'ala will know what's going on in our heart, but not other human beings. And in all honesty, we even today, we really do not know how this thought process works. How does it really originate? Or to be more specific, what triggers a neuron to think a certain way? What we know at this point is that apparently a group of neurons with the same frequency or same thought process they become dominant, and that's when we decide to act on it. And this is all happening at a very subtle level. Just imagine that the neurons, they have a thought process there, which is going back and forth, and it's very subtle at that point. In Urdu, we call it latif. लतीफ़ होता है कि एक बड़ा लतीफ़ सा एहसास है कि है भी और नहीं भी है. It's such a subtle process in the mind, which is there, and it behaves as towards the other people as if it is not there. And Allah Ta'ala is called Al-Latif. So in context of this entire universe, Allah is Al-Latif, that the most subtle. Allah is the supreme consciousness of the universe, and his thought is the most subtle. It is there, but we do not feel it, and it seems as if it is not there. So let's focus on, I'll come back to our human beings, how we humans decide to say something. So let's say if there is some thought process that comes to our mind. I'm talking about not pure science at this time, what we know at this time. Then when a thought comes to our mind and it takes a dominant shape, then somehow the information is transmitted to our frontal cortex, to the motor cortex area. The information is sent down to our muscles of the voice box or the larynx. And then we produce a sound, and through our tongue, we articulate it into a meaningful word. Now, the subtle process that started in our brain got converted into energy, which is the sound wave. And this sound wave then travels through in the form of a wave to the recipient or the other human being. It goes to their ears, and we know that this sound wave is converted to electrical impulses in the inner ear, and then that impulses, they are sent to the brain in a wave form, almost the same pattern the way it originated in another person's brain. And once it's converted to that waveform in the other person's brain, then we understand what that guy meant. Well, what was he saying? This is a very subtle process. So in order for us to understand or communicate, we have to convert our subtle process into an energy wave, which is then converted back to a subtle process, a very subtle wave in the recipient's brain. The point, so the time is coming, actually. I was reading about that as well, and it's almost last year, I think, that 2 years ago. The time is coming where we human beings are developing Neuralinks, which means that there will be devices capable of reading our neurons or reading our brain waves, and they will train that whenever we think about something, that will be transmitted instantaneously to the machines or the robots that will do work for us. And they're also implementing that to their weapons as well, that astaghfirullah, the time will come that mere the thought process that we don't like someone will trigger robots that have weapons with them, and they are going to try to eliminate who we don't like. Unfortunately, that time will be coming at some point. So our thoughts will be converted to a form of energy which is more deadly and more fierce at some point in the future. Now, Allah's consciousness and Allah Ta'ala's might is totally at a totally different level. Nothing compares to that. And we have
You're muted. You're muted. We cannot hear. Minna? No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh shoot, I don't know how I got muted. So how long you have not been able to listen? So I may have to go back a little bit.
For maybe a minute.
What was the last
No,
thing?
not very long.
Okay.
You're saying something about the military?
Which one?
The military.
Oh yeah, so we were talking about Neuralinks, okay. So yeah, I was talking about that. I don't know how it got muted. Let me just move this keyboard away. Maybe it got pressed somehow. Hold on. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. So yeah, we were talking about the Neuralinks at that point, and I was talking that the time is coming where we human beings will develop certain technology which can directly read our brain and then translate it into a usable energy, which the robots will get the command directly from our brain without us typing anything or saying anything, and they will carry out the task what we want, and they want to implement that technology in the weapons as well, so that just by the thought process that a nation doesn't like some other nation, they can actually will have the technology to eliminate them. Just their thought will be enough that we don't like that nation, and the robots or the weapons will go and attack that nation, which is unfortunately very scary, but that time is coming too. So then I was, and they probably will use it for both constructive and destructive process. Now, when we talk about Allah's consciousness and Allah's might, it is at a totally different level, and nothing compares to Allah's might. And we have talked about this before. So I'll give a quick recap, is that everything in the universe that we see is made up of small atoms, which is made up of very, very small subatomic particles, which are scattered throughout the galaxy. Now, when Allah Ta'ala decides to make something, all Allah Ta'ala is saying here, Allah Ta'ala's, this ayah is in Surah An-Nahl, ayah number 40, that Allah Ta'ala has to say, إِنَّمَا قَوْلُنَا لِشَيْءٍ إِذَا أَرَدْنَهُ أَن نَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ, that if we ever will something to exist, all we say is be, and it is. So Allah Ta'ala has to just think or imagine what Allah Ta'ala wants to make. For example, it can be gold, it can be any metal, it can be any animal, it can be a planet. Allah Ta'ala just has to think about it and say, be it, kun, and it happens. So why am I bringing it up here? Because we human beings also are connected so close to Allah Ta'ala that we in our daily lives also need Allah Ta'ala's kun. And every joy, happiness, sadness, or any emotion that we have, it comes from Allah Ta'ala. This is because Allah Ta'ala says in Quran, this is Surah Najm, ayah number 43, ke wa annahu huwa adhaka wa abka. Okay. Moreover, He is the one who brings about joy and sadness. Now, what does it mean? It means that when you hear a good news and you smile, that happiness, that feeling of the emotion of happiness comes from Allah Ta'ala. And when you hear a bad news and you cry, this emotion of sadness, that also comes from Allah Ta'ala. So in our daily lives, a lot of things sometimes make us happy. When we are very hungry, we eat, and it gives us a sense of fulfillment, happiness, and pleasure. Now, I'll just go through to talk about a little bit about it so that we understand what Allah Ta'ala is saying and what we understand in science. So when we eat something really tasty, Allah Ta'ala has given us, by His mercy, a lot of senses in our mouth, sense of different types of tastes, sensations, temperature sensations, pressure sensations that check the consistency. Allah Ta'ala has given us a sense of smell, which tells us about the aroma of the food. Our neurons are deciphering every single bit of information that is present in that food. And it's all going to our brain. And when we swallow it and all the neurons in the brain that are deciphering this information, they have been activated. At some point, the science says that it triggers the limbic system, and that limbic system gives us a sense of happiness and pleasure. But what this ayah is saying, if we use this ayah as a reference, it means that when all the neurons in our brain have fired up and they have deciphered all that information stored in that piece of food, our soul or our body at some level, which we don't feel, which we don't know, it connects with Allah Ta'ala and asks Allah Ta'ala for his kun, for his permission to be happy. And we feel the fayakun when Allah Ta'ala grants his permission. That happiness then comes, we feel that. If Allah Ta'ala refuses to grant his kun to the human soul, life becomes very miserable for those people. Nothing tastes good. They can go to the most expensive restaurant in the world. They can spend top dollars for the food, but they will not get the pleasure and happiness if Allah Ta'ala refuses to give them his kun. They will not feel that fayakun or that happiness. And it has resulted in some people feeling so worthless that they have taken their lives. Now, I'm not talking about the people who get depressed. Now, depression is an illness. I'm not talking about the people who get sick because they are not feeling the pleasure or happiness because of their illness. I'm talking about the normal people who have done really bad things in their lives and somehow lost the connection with Allah Ta'ala. And for them, the life becomes miserable. And we have seen there are many, many examples of people in very high position and power that nothing tastes good for them. No, despite having all the money and pleasures, they're still not happy. They're depressed. And they don't feel happy about that. So this is what this ayah says, that this sense of pleasure, joy, and sadness, it comes from Allah Ta'ala, and only Allah Ta'ala can grant it. Now, in context of, I think I have maybe 5 or 6 more minutes. So what does Allah Ta'ala say about this connection with him? So there are a couple of ayahs. I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but I'm just going to read and this simple translation and simple understanding. Allah Ta'ala talks about in this ayah, which is the Surah Ar-Rum. This is ayah number 21, and I'm just going to read the translation. And of his signs, and Allah Ta'ala ke nishaniyon mein se, is that he created for you from yourselves mates that you may find tranquility in them. Allah Ta'ala ne, the word used kiya Allah Ta'ala ne, it is litaskunu. Litaskunu means taskeen pana, ek rahat pana, feeling of happiness to be with your partner. Okay? So this happiness between you and your partner, it comes from Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala made the partners so that you feel happy. Okay? And he placed between you affection and mercy. Indeed, in that are signs for a people who give thought. Okay, if you understand this thing, that this happiness is coming from Allah Ta'ala, and Allah Ta'ala created your zawja or your partner to feel that happiness. And this affection and mercy comes from him. But then we come to Surah Dariyat. There Allah Ta'ala says the same thing, and we created pairs of all things, so perhaps you would be mindful. And Allah Ta'ala has already explained that what emotion Allah Ta'ala is talking about. But then ayah number 50, Allah Ta'ala says, فَفِرُّ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Okay, so run towards Allah, flee إِلَى اللَّهِ, flee towards Allah. إِنِّي لَكُمْ مِنْهُ نَذِيرٌ مُبِينٌ. So I'm truly sent, proclaim, O Prophet, flee to Allah, I'm truly sent by him with a clear warning to you. Nazir hota hai ki warner, mubin, clear warning dene ke liye bheja. Now, here is you have to remember our previous discussion here. Okay, Allah Ta'ala is talking about the partner, our physical partners in this world. But then right next to it, Allah Ta'ala says, Fafiru ilallah. Okay, then Allah Ta'ala is talking about partner, that we run towards partner, but how do we run towards Allah Ta'ala? What part of us Allah Ta'ala is talking about which should run towards Allah? Okay? So this is, remember we talked about our soul and about our body. Okay, these are two things we are combination of the spiritual realm and the physical realm. So here Allah Ta'ala is clearly saying that, yeah, you do have a physical partner, which is of this world, who you connect with and you find tranquility in them. But keep in mind that your soul also needs to have connection with someone where it can find the taskeen as well. So that is why right after this ayah of partner, Allah Ta'ala says, Fafiru ilallahi, run towards Allah Ta'ala, because your soul also needs some nourishment, some happiness, some pleasure. Otherwise, it's not going to be happy, it's going to be lost. And then Allah Ta'ala clarifies this thing to make sure that humans should not consider soul, nauzubillah, as a partner of Allah Ta'ala, because that is a wrong. Some people probably have thought about that in the previous religions. So Allah Ta'ala made it very clear in Surah Shura, Surah number 42, ayah number 11. Again, He is the originator of heavens and the earth. He has made for you spouses from among yourself and made mates for cattle as well, multiplying you both. So Allah Ta'ala is talking clearly about the physical bodies here. Okay, He has made spouses from among yourselves, that you have a partner, physical partner in this world, and even for every animal that is present on this earth, so that you can keep growing. But then Allah Ta'ala says there's nothing like Him, for He alone is all seeing and all hearing and all seeing. Okay, do not even for a second, because of the previous ayahs, be mistaken that Allah has any partner. Your soul needs Allah Ta'ala for its own taskeen, for its own happiness and pleasure. Allah Ta'ala doesn't need them. So Allah Ta'ala is basically trying to remind us that soul that we have, it belongs to a spiritual realm which gets its happiness and pleasure once it's connected with Allah Ta'ala. Once it loses that connection, they are as good as dead. They may be physically alive, but the spiritual self is dead, and they will not have any pleasure or happiness after that. And Allah clarified in ayahs as well, yes, you have a partner, physical partner. Your soul also needs someone to connect to, and that is only Allah's Zat that can connect to the soul. But never assume that Allah Ta'ala has any example. Like, okay, your soul is not, nauzubillah, a partner or an example in any way. That is, astaghfirullah, wrong thing to say, because previously in other religions, this is how it was considered. But Allah Ta'ala made it clear in Islam that that is not how it is. Yes, your soul does need to be connected with Allah Ta'ala for its own sake, but that's the extent of it. And if you do it, you'll have a blissful and happy life. So I'll probably end over here. If anyone has any question about anything, please feel free to ask. Yeah, tell me.
What if like you do good things and you're like really powerful, but you're still like small?
No, but then first you have to see how is the connection with Allah Ta'ala. Do you have your connection with Allah Ta'ala as well or not? And if you have a person of Iman and good faith and your connection with Allah Ta'ala, then sometimes I told you that there are illnesses, depression as well. You have to make sure there's nothing, illness going on in the body that is causing this problem. I'm not talking about those people. Allah Ta'ala has mentioned in other ayahs who those people are. They are called, Allah Ta'ala used the word فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ. That is the word Allah Ta'ala has used for them. These are the people who have forgotten about themselves, who they really are, and so Allah made them forget. And you go there, if you forget who you really are, I think I'm not translating it correctly, but it's something that Allah Ta'ala has made them forget who they are, basically. That's what Allah Ta'ala said. And we'll talk about it at some point when it comes. So those are the people who forget why they came to this earth, what was their reason, what was their role. Those are the people who get sad, this kind of sadness, which I'm talking about. Okay. Anyone, any other kid, if it was difficult, please do let me know.